Question number 6, Todd Muller.
Tēnā koe e te mana whakawā.
Tēnā koe.
My question's to the Minister of Building and Housing and asks, where is the government directly contracting to build homes as part of its comprehensive housing plan?
Speaker.
The Honourable Dr Nick Smith.
Mr Speaker, there are over 80 sites across New Zealand where houses are being built on public land through government agencies. Major sites include Hobsonville, Tamaki, McLennan, Waihemea, Rananoka Road, Waterview in Auckland, Awatea, Wells Street, Colombo Street and Vanguard Drive in Christchurch, to just name the top 10 which will deliver over 10,000 homes. The government is building more houses today on public land than at any time in the last quarter century.
Supplementary.
Point of order, the Honourable David Parker.
Mr Speaker, it appears that the government's tried to pretend that that primary question was in order by capitalising the word comprehensive. It is an assertion that ought not to be, particularly in a primary question, sir. They've been trying to use the word comprehensive around their plans all week, but it doesn't properly sit in a question because it's an assertion, not a fact.
Order. No, the member might think it's an assertion, but it actually has been identified and authenticated as a fact, and that was required before. And that was required before we could accept the question. The government has a video publication in which it refers to its National's Comprehensive Housing Plan. Order. 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 I expect some order. Order. If I have to ask a member to leave for interjecting when I'm on my feet, I won't hesitate to do so. I anticipated this would be raised. I went and sought the evidence. Once the publication was made available, whether members agree with the fact or not, it is authentication enough for the question to be accepted. I'll hear from the Honourable Jerry Brownlee.
Mr Speaker, I'd further point out, sir, that in primary question number 5, the Right Honourable Winston Peters effectively acknowledges the comprehensive plan by referring to the government's ability to comprehensively deal with this current challenge.
That's not good. Order, order, order. That was not at all helpful. But I will hear now from Chris.
Mr Speaker, I just seek some reassurance that the video clip that you're referring to was in fact a government video clip and not a National Party video clip. Because if it was a National Party one, you would be indicating that in fact any material produced by the National Party is something that we could question ministers on. I'm unable to. Order. I'm unable to. I'm not sure of whether it was a National Party clip or a government person. I'm sorry, I can't answer that. Further point of order?
Yeah, it is, sir. You know, this is the very day when the Chilcot report comes out in the United Kingdom, criticising things like loaded terms like Operation of Enduring Freedom and Coalition of the Willing.
Point of order, please?
Well, actually, what this is effectively an attempt to dress up loaded terms that are assertions in a way that ought not to be acceptable, sir, as meeting the rules relating to questions.
If the question, as had been put forward, and it had referred to a comprehensive housing plan with a small c, that, in my opinion, would have been an opinion of this government. If I asked this House whether there is a comprehensive, small c, comprehensive building plan, I suspect most on my right would say there is, and most on my left would say there isn't, in which case I would not have accepted it because it would have been a breach of Standing Order 380 when it was putting both inference and opinion into the question. So in that regard, Mr Parker is absolutely right. Once evidence was presented to me of an effective publication and the government's taken the opportunity to call it such, that gave me confidence to accept the question as being authenticated. Is this?
It's a fresh point of order, Mr Speaker.
It's another matter altogether.
Yes.
If it's another matter altogether, I'll hear it. I don't want any further discussion around the authenticity and the right for this question to be here.
Well, it's related to the authenticity.
No, well, then it's not fresh.
Well, there is a fresh point of order, Mr Speaker.
No, it's not.
Because you've been misled.
Order. I'm on my feet. We've had the opportunity to speak to you privately. where you continue to raise points of order which you claim are addressing another matter, and you're saying that this is going to address another matter. If it is, I'm happy to hear it. But if in any way it's just continuing to relitigate a ruling that I've made, that in itself leads to disorder, Mr Hipkins.
Mr Speaker.
Fresh point of order.
Mr Speaker, I have the video clip. It is a National Party video clip and not a government video clip. Does that mean that we can question ministers on anything that is a National Party publication?
No, and it does not. Order. It does not mean that you can question it. As I said, when I sought the authentication, I did not bother to clarify whether it was National Party or a government. I should have done so, I didn't. But it certainly does not mean that in the future the opposition can question a government on a party matter. The question has been accepted. It is now some time since it has been asked, and I don't think we've had the question, so I'm going to invite Todd Muller to repeat the question.
Supplementary question to the Minister. How many homes have been completed as part of the government's...
If I hear another interjection from Carmel Sepuloni in the question time today, I will be asking you to leave. Would the member Todd Muller start the question again?
Thank you, Mr Speaker. A supplementary question to the Minister. How many homes have been completed as part of the government's very comprehensive housing program?
The Honourable Dr Nick Smith.
Mr Speaker, at Hobsonville, 680 homes are finished and 391 are under construction. At Waihemia, 155 homes are complete and another 32 are under construction. On that site, a home is being completed every third day. At Tamaki, 32 are completed and 122 are being constructed. At McLennan, 11 are complete, 52 under construction. At Awatea, 24 complete and 20 are under construction. Government projects are expected to deliver at least 10,000 new homes in Auckland by 2020.
Supplementary question, Todd Muller.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Supplementary to the Minister. How does the scale of residential building by public agencies compare historically?
Mr Speaker.
The Honourable Dr Nick Smith.
Mr Speaker, this year Housing New Zealand has budgeted to spend over $1 billion on maintenance, upgrades and new builds. This is double the level of the annual investment under the previous government. Last year, Housing New Zealand completed over 800 new homes. That is more than double any year that was achieved under the previous government. That's homes completed. Housing New Zealand is ramping up its new house build rate with 2,000 homes to be completed over the next 2 years. And of course, that's just Housing New Zealand. There are a large number of other agents, including my own ministry, that is directly contracting for house builds.
Supplementary question, Todd Muller.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. To the Minister, how much funding is the government providing to Crown agencies for housing, and how does it compare historically?
Mr Speaker.
The Honourable Dr Nick Smith.
Well, government payments to Housing New Zealand need to also take into account the dividend that is paid back to government. The average payment to Housing New Zealand has been $600 million per year under this government, with a dividend per year averaging $73 million, i.e. net payments of $500 million per year.
Order. The Honourable David Parker.
Mr Speaker, the Minister's not responsible for Housing New Zealand. I'm somewhat surprised that the last two questions have been in respect of someone else's responsibilities, not his own.
And I considered the matter quite carefully at the time, but I think the matter is related enough for the question to be accepted. Does the Minister wish to complete his answer?
I'm sure members opposite don't want the comparison, because as compared with the $500 million of net payments this government has made to Housing New Zealand, the previous government averaged $300 million in payments, $50 million in dividends, i.e. net payments of $250 million from the government, i.e. This government is providing Housing New Zealand with more than double the funding of the previous government.
Question number 7.